Hi, it's me again, Adam Davis, and I was just preparing for a workshop I'm going to give on learning Groovy here in a couple weeks, so I decided I would try recording a little bit, see how it goes. So this is for people who are new to Groovy or somewhat new and maybe want a refresher course. Or maybe you've been using it for a while and you just want to have a reminder and see if you missed anything. So, first thing you want to do is either go to groovy.lang.org or sdkman.io, depending on how you want to install it. So if you're going to use sdkman, that's the easiest way. Then you can just install it from the command line by typing SDK install Groovy and then the version number. Or you could just download it, and there's a way to do that as well. So I'll assume you have it installed from this point forward. So Groovy, the main thing that you'll find coming from Java or any other statically compiled language is you have the possibility of using dynamic typing, where instead of the type, you just use the keyword def, and you can have that variable can contain any type of value at all, whether it's a string or number or anything. So this can be a bit jarring at first, but as you come to use it a lot, there are actually a lot of advantages, such as the ability to mock objects very easily, just by using a map, for example. There are other advantages and disadvantages of doing that. The nice thing is, if you really want type checking, you can get it by using the @typechecked annotation or compile static, which will actually compile your class, and this can be on a per class basis. So there are four main ways to run Groovy. Either using Groovy Script, like when you use the Groovy console, or just plain old Groovy on the command line. Groovy scripts that are embedded in your application, using Groovy shell, and embedded a little URL there to look at how to do that if you want. Just using the plain old static void main, just like you would in a Java app, or using it in a built-in way, like in Grails or Gradle or Rat-Pack, for example. Anything that just assumes that you're running Groovy. Groovy uses def in place of types to define variables, fields, or methods. So you can use it this type to define a variable. So let's say you have a variable called person, for example. So you can define it that way. Or it can also be used for methods. So it's useful for when you're not quite sure what you're doing yet, and you're not sure, like, if your method returns a value or not, So you can just do that. And when you're specifying parameters, you don't have to specify a type at all, or the def keyword there. So it's just assumed, because you're specifying parameters, that that's obvious to the compiler what you're doing. The next thing I'm going to talk about are GStrings in Groovy. So in Groovy, you can use a plain old string if you want. So for that, you use the single quotation marks. But it has a very powerful thing called the Groovy string, or the GString, in which you can embed variables using the $sign. and then that's interpreted at runtime so that you can actually run this, and you'll see that it's actually interpreted. So if I say, where I say this is a G string, hello world is printed, where the hello variable is. And then I print out, here I'm printing the class of that string. It shows you at runtime it's the GString impl class. The other cool thing you have in Groovy is multi-line string. This can be very useful if you have a big block of text that you use in your, and you want to embed it in your code. In Groovy you just use either 3 quotation marks here. The 3 single quotations means it's a plain old string. If there are 3 double quotes, then you actually have a multi-line G string. So that can be useful in a lot of applications. So here I'm printing that out, and you can see that the text, or the space on the left hand side here, is part of the string as well as these new line characters. Groovy has a lot of enhancements for doing math. Usually in Java, the default number would be, in this case, a double, right, or a float. You wouldn't assume that this was anything else in Java. But that can cause some, you get floating point errors if you do certain arithmetic operations. So in Groovy, they actually default to the big decimal object, the java.math big decimal, which eradicates those floating point errors. And this can be very important, for example, if you're dealing with currency values, but it's also appropriate for most applications. If you want to use a double, you can specify that. You can either specify the type being double, or you just add, so I'm not doing that here. Here I just add the letter D to the end to specify that it's a double. And then you can put like an F there to make it a float, etc. So then I'm printing out the class here to prove that's a double. And then if you do arithmetic with those 2 classes, you end up getting a double in this case. So it just depends on what math you're doing, which type you'll get at the end of it. But you don't have to worry about it. It's all taken care of by Groovy. So here I'm adding a float and a double, and I also end up with a double. So the other cool thing about Groovy is that numbers are objects. Numbers are always objects. Everything's basically an object in Groovy, unless you otherwise specify it. So it actually adds, as part of the GDK, it adds the times method to the integer class. So if I say 3.times, and then I pass in this block code here, which is a closure, which we'll talk about later, but that means to do this 3 times. So here at the end you can see it prints out everything is an object 3 times.